Welcome to Anita Purves Nature Center in Urbana. So we traveled across town to come and find today's Campfire Concepts Rec-lebrity.
We're super excited to have our first Rec-lebrity that was voted in by our population of viewers. Judy Miller was highly recommended and suggested for us to meet with. Judy's been with the Urbana Park District for over 35 years.
35 and a half.
And she's been the queen of conservation in Urbana and in our community for a very long time. We're really excited to talk with you today. So the first question I want to ask you is, in the breadth of experience that you've had, and you know, this nature center has been open for 40 years and had a significant impact on the community. You've seen a lot. So what are some of the biggest hurdles related to environmental education?
What's amazing for me in the many years that I've been involved in this field, because before I came here, I started as a 14-year-old doing a day camp in my backyard.
In your backyard?
In my backyard.
Wow.
My best friend and I were,
It's so fun.
we were the babysitters of the neighborhood, and all the moms wanted to go out and do mom stuff without their kids. And so we had a day camp for 2 summers. I think what's amazing to me is that we're still trying to get the message across that nature is part of us. So I think the hardest thing for any nature center is to stay relevant, and that sometimes we fall back on old school ways of doing things and being with the times and being aware and trying to anticipate what the next crisis is going to be. When I first started in the field, acid rain was one of the biggest talks about. There was misbelief that it was happening. Well, we have that with global warming and the whole question of fracking and sustainability. All of those have been around in some form or fashion. It's just that it moves in a funny way, depending on what our political system is and what our economy is and what contact people have with those mechanisms. And so for a nature center to be part of the community and being a vital part of community to impart information you want to be an advocate, but you don't necessarily want to preach. You want to allow people to come up with their own decisions, but give them the tools to do that.
That's a good point.
And that's continually a problem. And that's something we're always dealing with. Is one of the frustrations we have is we've been here in the community for 40 years, and there's still people in town that don't know we exist. How are we relevant in the world at large? How do we bring the concerns that are global to a community level, and then how do we make those connections to people that are we're not there with, and still making connections with the people that are there, and how can we broaden that? So we're a much more community resource.
Connections are a great term when you're thinking about a nature center and your local habitat, environment, people, etc.
The other thing we grapple with is the underserved. What are the populations? This is something across the district that we're dealing with, but what are the populations that we're not touching, and how come we're not touching, and how can we do that? And again, that's been a topic for all of my career of who are the people that we're not reaching. In the nature center field, what still concerns me is that we tend to cater to the elitists, that the people that come to us aren't always the people that need to come to us. They're people that are already knowing that they need to contact with nature, that grew up in an atmosphere where they went camping or spent time outdoors. It's reaching those people that haven't had those exposures that I think is still very much the challenge. Changes from place to place because your community is going to be different, but the basics are still there. You're still going to have underserved populations. Why would a person who's worried about where they're going to live and where they're going to get their next meal really care about what happens to the tree in the woods? And that battle has been there all of my career. How do we make things relevant to the person? And then there's always the fads. How do you deal with the things that come up every 20 or so years? I'm personally grappling with the idea of wild foraging, which is a big buzzword in the community right now, and I philosophically have issues with it about it. I said I go back and forth, and I understand why people want to do it, but it's not necessary. And if we're really want to be conscious of the connections that we have with nature, then we have to really answer why are we doing this? Is it because you need the food, or is it because you think you're making a connection with wildlife? And so those are trying to come up with ways of how to interact with people that have different opinions and different views of the world around them, and try to move each other on the continuum is always a challenge for us. So those are some of the I think some of the hurdles.
What environmental education or nature-centered trend are you the most excited about? So with the things that you were just talking about,
Sure.
is there any current trends that maybe are repeated from 20 years ago?
Well, the whole constant contact with nature. There was a pivotal point in my career where, or before Richard Lou's book came out, I was at a conference again of nature center administrators, and had just visited my house that I grew up in. I took a tour of it with my son, and a girl I used to babysit for that lived in the neighborhood bought my parents' house.
Wow.
Oh, so then you were able to go in.
So we've been there. My family had been there several times, and we lived in the house for like 30 years. So it's, and so she still calls the house the Miller house, which is really funny because now she's lived there for a long time.
That's great.
So we did a tour of the house, and what was interesting to me as I was doing it was I had more visceral memories when we were in the yard, walking around the yard, talking about what was where, because she wanted history about the yard. She was one of my campers when I was 14 years old.
Nice.
So she remembered being there, and my dad was Santa Claus for their family one year. So that was really poignant in my head as I remembered actual activities and things doing in the yard. So I go to this conference, and at it, two of the presenters got up and talked about, one, why we went into the profession to begin with. And he gave an example of, this was Gordon Maupin from the Wilderness Center in Ohio. He gave an example where they had a piece of property that somebody had donated to them, and they hadn't decided what to do with it yet. It had been pretty damaged piece of property. It had mostly invasive species. And he drove past it one day and noticed that kids had been building forts in the property.
Cool.
And at first he was like, oh, that's not good, there's liability, whatever. And then as he drove the rest of the way home, he started thinking about it. He goes, I would have been that kid. I was that kid. I did go out and build forts in vacant lots. And, and so...
So did he use that property to make the wilderness?
So what they did was they decided to leave the property as it was to allow kids to go and play in nature without being so concerned about the fragility of a habitat, because this habitat was already pretty damaged, and there wasn't a whole lot that they could do that would be worse for it. And so they made it basically a nature play area, which before that term was even coined.
Right.
And I remember as he was talking, I was flashing back to that tour of my neighborhood, the house I grew up in the neighborhood, and I was thinking, yes, that's exactly what we need to do. And I came back from that and met up with Tim and Ellen and Robin and a couple people, and I said, we need to do this. We need to provide this opportunity for people. I don't want them going in Busey Woods doing it because it's a pretty fragile environment, and one bad thing can mushroom into really horrendous, because there could be an orchid that somebody picks and it's gone or stomps on or whatever. And so we started dreaming about what we finally put in 2007. It took a long time to get there for a variety of reasons, but putting in the nature playscape, we were very cognizant of what it was we were doing, that it was there to let the children decide what the features were, how to play with them, how to engage with them. And to me, that excites me. That idea that people come back on a regular basis with their families to go and explore that, and then they go for a hike in the woods, and they might come into the nature center, or they might walk into the park. But those constant contacts with nature that are just, they're happening here, but that you can take it home and do it in your own yard. I mean, I was lucky enough that I grew up with a family where my father was a horrible landscaper. And so whatever we did to the yard was okay. It was okay. Because my dad, he got out there and mowed the lawn, but usually once my brothers got old enough, they were the ones mowing the lawn. But I mean, we had this leaf pile behind the garage that was there for years. He never did anything with it, just threw leaves on it and it just stayed there. So it was, all of those things were there as a kid.
Mm-hmm. Just want to end by encouraging you all to come out to Anita Purves Nature Center and the surrounding Busey Woods, Crystal Lake Park. Experience nature, connect with it like Judy encouraged you all and us to do. And just want to say, also take the time to hit subscribe to our YouTube channel down in the bottom corner, and visit us at www.wearecampfireconcepts.com for some fantastic swag and learn more about our services and meet wonderful people like Judy Miller. So thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
It was lots of fun. Yay!
Thanks, guys.
Oh, good work.